So you said you grew up in the sticks?
In the sticks, yeah.
Yeah.
It was only a little community of four people, four families.
4 families, so there were like 4 houses?
Four houses, yeah, that's it.
And what did those families do?
Well, they were farmers, just like us.
What were they farming?
Well, I don't know.
Like horses, cows, crops?
Yeah, we all had cows, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
And I had to go to school a long ways. And this little, it was called Neuradic.
Neuradic. Okay, and it was in the Ukraine?
That's in the Ukraine. And the next bigger city was Novograd-Volinsk, and that was only about 20 kilometers from the Polish border.
So how far did you have to go to school?
To school? I'm not sure, but it was a long ways.
Oh, yeah?
I always had to wait when the older boys went and try and went with them, especially going home. I waited for them.
Uh-huh.
Because the Russian kids are teeing off on us.
So the 4 families, the 4 houses were all Germans?
All Germans, yes.
So how is it that 4 German families ended up in the Ukraine?
Well, there's a big community that was called, I forgot now.
They were further apart, I guess, all of them,
No, but the whole, there was really, really a big German community.
So that the region was kind of German?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That's all right.
Oh, you can see that too.
Yeah. So that was a senior's moment?
Yeah, that was a senior's moment.
Okay. So you said you had wolves and snakes there?
Oh, yeah. Well, because we lived close to the forest.
Uh-huh.
And even walking through, sitting in the backyard and looking, there's a big snake coming along.
Poisonous?
Well, I guess they were a bit, really, but I'm not exactly sure.
Huh.
But lots of wolves.
Huh. Did you ever see one or just hear them?
No, I seen them, yeah.
Huh. Wow.
Foxes. We had some cattle, I'm not exactly sure, but we had big, my father, he planted a lot of fruit trees. Mm-hmm. And the difference was between the German people and the Russians. Whenever the Germans moved in, they right away planted a lot of fruit trees. And the Russians came and cut them down.
So did you actually own property, or was this
yeah.
communal? Like, was it communal property?
No, it was our property. I'm not sure how many acres or whatever it was there.
Huh.
And lots of horror stories to tell.
So it was you and 3 brothers?
And 3 brothers, yeah.
And your mom and dad?
Yep.
Mom and Opa. Huh.
And my father was sort of an inspector at the peat digging plant. Mm-hmm. And when I went to school, this was in the middle of September, 1937. And when I went to school, I met him there in the middle of September, and it was kind of cold already. He said, "I'm going to get you a briefcase so you don't have to carry the books loose." Mm-hmm. And I came home, my mother was crying, my father was gone, never seen him again. And somebody did some research on it and said he was executed on the end of the month in the city.
2 days later, you said.
How many?
2 days later.
2 days later in the city of Zhytomyr. They have Novograd-Volinsk, mm-hmm. Zhytomyr, and then Kiev.
Wow.
And that was bad. And then you left as the German army was pushed back.
This is in 1937?
This was 1937, yeah. And we lived there till, oh yeah.
Because the Germans and the Soviets were allies until 1940.
Yeah, I know. But what happened is, then the communists came in, dismantled our house, and resettled us in a bigger community.
Huh.
I don't know what that was for,
huh.
But anyhow, then I had to change from the German school to a Russian school, and I couldn't even speak Russian.
And how old were you then?
Well, I was about 7 years old.
Huh. And so, how far away was the new community from where you grew up till age 7?
I'm not exactly sure, but it was a few kilometers,
Huh.
Another thing too, I always remember geese. When I went to school later on, to the school in Radic, mm-hmm. and there was a family with a lot of geese. Uh-huh. They were really biting us.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. So you had snakes, wolves, and geese.
Geese, yeah. And I experienced the fighting between the Russian army and the German army, and it was just terrible. We dug a hole in the ground, made sort of a little bunker, and you could actually hear the artillery shells exploding all over the place, you know, really.
So how much later was this?
This was in when the war started between Russia and, I guess, 1941.
41, yeah.
And then we finally, when the German army was pushed back, and since we were German descent, we didn't want to stay there, so we were actually started out as refugees.
So did you move back with the German army, or?
No, before that, you know, just before they came, they were pushed back.
So
that was in middle of November 1943.
So were you living in territory that the German army had already?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So before the German army got pushed back, you started to leave the Ukraine. Is that right?
Yes.
So they were still controlling that territory.
Oh yes, they were. Yeah. And we were from middle of 1943 till we finally arrived in Germany in 1945. But there's another story behind that. So. Mm-hmm. And we ended up in Poland. It was about 2 kilometers from the German border, and then this was in 43, in the spring of 1944, and I was drafted into what you call land year camp.
And you were how old then?
I was not even 14 years old. I was turning 14 in June. Mm-hmm. So then again, we stayed in that camp, and we dug anti-tank ditches. Mm-hmm. And then at Christmas I went home, and when I went back after Christmas, and in the beginning of January we had to flee too because the Russian army was coming with this camp. Mm-hmm. So we got a team of horses, a wagon. We were about 60 boys in that camp, mm-hmm. all about the same age. And we went all the way from Poland, and just north of Berlin, the city of the province of Pommern, and that's where I met my aunt and 2 cousins. As I walked past, I had remembered the name Caroline Horst, mm-hmm. and I asked my officer, "Can I have a aunt and uncle living here? Can I go and visit them?" And they said yes. And we stayed, usually with these boys, we usually stayed in the schools, you know. We were all empty anyhow. And I still remember to this very day, in the middle of January, walking through across the field, and they said, "Greetings." You know what the greetings were.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And so they gave me all kinds of fruit along, like, and again, and figured the officer who was in charge, he thought I wouldn't come back, you know, but you were so brainwashed. Mm-hmm. You're not going to desert, you know. So and from there we went all the way up to the East Sea, and we ended up in the province of Lüneburg, mm-hmm. The city of Lüneburg, and what you call in German you call Lüneburger Heide, or Lüneburger Heather.
So is this part of Poland now too?
No. This is in Germany. Yeah. There's 3 provinces don't belong to Germany, which should actually. Ostpreußen, that's where our ancestors come from, mm-hmm. and Westpreußen and the province of Pommern. Mm-hmm. They're old German provinces. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, we ended up about in the province of Schleswig-Holstein, mm-hmm. and then when for the beginning of 45, and the war was over, they divided us up to farmers, so I worked on the farm. And then 2 fellas I was with, they had brothers, they came up, they knew where we were, and I had a pair of army shoes. I traded them for a old bicycle, and with the other guys, and we bicycled all the way down from the province of Schleswig-Holstein all the way down to the province of Sachsen.
So how far is that, do you think?
Oh, that's a long ways. They're close to the city of Leipzig. Huh. And when I got there, the Americans were there. And they gave me the address from my mother. She was actually separated from there. She ended up in the city of Chemnitz. And she had a cousin living in a little town called Springen. That's between Hanover and Hameln. And they gave me the address, and I bicycled all the way from there again to this little town, Springen. And people always ask me, what did you live on? I says, well, people took me in. And I do have regrets, especially the last place they took me in was a bakery. And I said thank you when I left. But I was back in the meantime since with your mother, Bill. And I should have gone back and looked them up and said, really, really thank you. So quite often I think, what happened? Those guys did a really good job. What happened to them? Really? So, and then we got in touch. My mother got in touch with some. She actually served an apprenticeship as a seamstress at a family named Goltz in Canada. But this was in Russia, in the Ukraine, when she served the apprenticeship there. We got in touch with her, and of course I was brought over to Canada by a Canadian farmer by the name of Elsie and Ewald Assenheimer. So, and that was in June of 1949.
So they were your sponsors?
They were my sponsors, yeah. And then we came over to Canada by ship. I landed in Halifax. And then by train after that. And then the farmer actually retired. And then my two brothers and my mother had left already Alberta. They came over after. But they went to BC. And then I arrived in Vancouver in 1951, end of April. That's it. Now I'm here. That's it. Okay. Thank you.